Okay, yeah. So anyway, we're here on and just something I wanted to discuss today. This is actually a present from Nato Sensei. It's a biography of Albert Einstein.
Cool.
And yeah, it's kind of cool. And what I thought I'd do is just one of the things about Einstein. He kind of said the universe was finite. Because if the universe were infinite, then gravity would also be infinite and would create all this stuff happening. So he didn't think the universe was infinite. But on the other hand, he said, but it has no boundaries. Okay, so it's a very interesting thing. Yesterday we were kind of playing with either or both and. I'm looking at a binary system, truth, lie, whatever you want to call it that way. Okay, it's either one or the other, okay? And then there's both and, okay? And the either or is kind of a linear system, okay? Whether it's right or it's wrong. Both and, is a bit more of an open system. Therefore, you might use the term as more non-linear, which is right, yin or yang. Well, I'm still looking, well, with the situation, does it call for yin, more receptive, or yang, more positive? Okay. But then again, we start to make a rule, okay? This situation is a yang situation, this situation is a yin situation. Okay, so either or. And then, write it down, chart it, make it, keep statistics on it. And then, on the other hand, both are available. Both are there. There's an easy balance to be yang and yin, yin and yang. Okay, so anyway, that was something I think we played with yesterday at the in-person class. Did you have any questions or observations off of that?
Not really at this time. I'm still trying to figure out both and.
Okay, yeah. Well, Einstein's statement is a both and statement. The universe is finite and it has no boundaries. Both and. The universe is finite and it has no boundaries.
Yeah, that's really weird and hard to picture.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we're looking at it from an either or. Either the universe is finite or it's infinite. It has no boundaries. Either or, right? On the other hand, Einstein says the universe is not infinite, but it has no boundaries. What is the universe? Infinite or not infinite? Either or. Okay? Infinite, no boundaries. Finite, boundaries. Either or. And so he kind of put together this thing about the universe. It's finite, but it has no boundaries. Okay? And let me see, there's a couple of things here. Okay, then we'll get up and move a little bit. Okay, one method that Einstein employed to help people visualize this notion was to begin by imagining two-dimensional explorers on a two-dimensional universe, like a flat surface. These flatlanders can wander in any direction on this flat surface, but the concept of going up or down has no meaning to them. Okay? So in other words, they can travel within this, but it's limited. There's no up or down in a two-dimensional universe. So in that way, okay, you can say the universe is a circle, but it has no boundaries. Or it has an obvious boundary, but it has a less obvious no boundary. Okay? And now imagine this variation. What if these flatlanders' two dimensions were still on a surface, but the surface was, in a way very subtle to them, gently curved? What if they and their world were still confined to two dimensions, but their flat surface was like the surface of a globe? As Einstein put it, let us consider now a two-dimensional existence, but this time on a spherical surface instead of a plane. An arrow shot by these flatlanders would still seem to travel in a straight line, but eventually it would curve around and come back, just as a sailor on the surface of a planet heading straight over the seas would eventually return from the other horizon. The curvature of the flatlanders' two-dimensional space makes their surface finite, and yet they can find no boundaries. Okay, so that was something that I always thought was pretty cool. Okay, now Osensei kind of talks about the universe a lot. Okay, and I've always thought that if I get three people together and provide the interpreters and everything, it'd be Albert Einstein, Carl Jung, and Osensei. I think that would be fascinating. Okay. So one of the things, for example, let's just say we have a human body. Okay. Right. And of course, the human body structure is very finite. But what if we were like Einstein's model of the universe? It's finite, but it has no boundaries. Now, what might that mean? Okay, physical body. You have an energy body. If you kind of go into more advanced yoga, you have a causal body. Okay. So, anything you feel like adding before we get up and move? That's just interesting to ponder.
Yeah, the four-dimensional hypersphere idea does make sense. Although I will say that since Einstein's death, physicists have done careful measurements to see if our three-dimensional space is in some way curved in four dimensions, and near as they can tell, it is not. It is flat. So
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
near as physicists can tell so far, our three-dimensional universe is, as it were, flat. It is not bent into a fourth dimension over large scales. Near as they can tell. I mean, the jury's still out. It could be a very large scale. But
Well, if you put gravity in, okay.
oh yeah, well it's bent like that, but I mean I'm talking like the overall shape of the visible universe on the big multi-galaxy cluster level over billions of light years, it's not curved.
Okay. Although light does curve.
Yeah, it does if you absolutely on local scales, right? And black holes, are
Yeah,
like infinite drops and things like that. But on the large scale structure of the universe, again, the caveat is as far as they've been able to measure, right?
yeah,
Because it could just be, a hypersphere on a really big scale. We're
yeah.
not sure. What we know is the visible universe is only part of the universe, but we don't know if it's like 85% of the universe or a trillionth of the universe. We don't know.
Well, yeah, the major thing, this whole definition of superposition. Multiple states exist until you measure it. And according to our current standards of measurement, what you're saying appears to be true. As our ability to measure in other dimensions, we may find other levels. The act of measuring something to some degree creates it. It's a funny thing. I mean, right? You measure something, you influence it, just the measuring of it. Okay. So in a way, it's kind of fascinating. I know that, for example, Nado Sensei kind of likes the Bobby Robert Nado Sensei. Okay. And what happens is that it's a tricky one because there's let's instead of Bobby, let's just say level one. Yeah, level one's pretty ordinary. Okay. Level one means I gotta get up and make coffee in the morning and and this is happening and that's happening and it's going to influence my day, which will influence my mood. That's level one. Level two, my sense of beingness is a little easier with things. So, instead of saying, okay, I got this rut, there's a sense where you begin to, not totally, begin to appreciate your existence. Level three, things start to open up a bit. Right there, I might say, my existence ties to some degree to other modes of existence. Yeah, I'm open to that possibility. And level four, I can breathe and I can sort of feel a connection into a much vaster space connected to that. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what happens is, you get Bobby or level one, and level one tries to measure two, and it doesn't quite hold that way. It's like all of a sudden, there's a point where you have a page in the book, you could read it forever. You get better at reading it and memorize it and turn the page. So level one page. Level two, the next page. You're reading a murder mystery, level one. You don't know who committed the murder. You turn the page, and you've got maybe 3 suspects. Turn that page. You narrow it down to 2. Turn the page again. Aha, I've solved it. So kind of that sort of thing. From level one, or the first page, you may have a rough schematic or something like I exist, I got to get up and make coffee again, that sort of thing, on the other hand, Starbucks is $2 away from where I am, so I can just go out and buy coffee if I want. But, there's that area right there. Level one is sort of okay, but it's pretty ordinary. And level two starts to open up a little bit. Level three. And each of them kind of has a particular feel to it, like different pages in a book or story. Okay, so that area right there, where to some degree what we're saying is there's identity and then there's self. And everybody kind of somehow has a level one, but they have a level two, a level three, a level four. And as they start to become a little bit more at ease with that, then there's something called self that, right? like, for example, even a very, very upgraded sense of who I am is not self, but it's better. I lead a better life. I appreciate things and appreciate myself more. And then there's self. And so for me, like, for example, if I measure the whole day from level 1 or Bobby, okay, I got to make coffee, or this is happening, that's happening. And level 2, Robert. I'm not going to call him Jackie Jack, that whatever stuff. That just might as well use the existing cosmology. Starts to kind of feel more present. Not so much I have to do that today. It's easier, level 3. Even easier, but that just means that all of a sudden, I have the beginnings of purpose. My purpose is not to get up and complain about making coffee in the morning. Okay, all right. And level 4 means there's a kind of a union with that purpose. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of a nice little schematic. You can do that lying in bed before you get up. What's level 1 today? What's level 2? Level 3? Yeah. Level 4? Oh. So that's one way of kind of looking at it. Okay. And anything before we get up?
Yeah, I really like the murder mystery analogy, because when you're reading a murder mystery, with each page or chapter, you get more clues, right?
Yeah.
And however, there's always a chance of a final chapter twist that makes everything look different. So when you're investigating the universe, or you're as a physicist, or you're investigating Aikido as an Aikidoka, it's like the more you train, the more clues you get, but there's still always the possibility of some clue down the line that will cause you to reframe everything you thought you already knew.
Yeah.
And this has happened to me multiple times during the course of my training over the years. So that's just I really like that analogy. That's all.
Yeah, one of the things, Agatha Christie really pissed everybody off when she wrote this book called The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And major part of, detective stories, it's just that, there's a narrator, a Watson, so to speak, right? That explains the detective's moves and everything. And I've never read it, but I heard that when it came out, everybody got, murder mystery fans got really pissed off, because what she did is she made the narrator, the Watson, the murderer. And everybody just thought that was just such a perverse trick to play, because it's so, it's taking a formula that you might think is sacrosanct, and it's just adding a little bit of a jack to it. And for example, Lo Sensei, martial arts is about this. And all of a sudden he added that, but martial arts is about inner development. Ultimately, it's tied to love and harmony. Okay. Boom. So we added kind of a little, right? And, you see some of the earlier versions of him in 1935 or something. It's pretty, it's pretty like that. And then, you kind of see him, as he gets older and the movements become smoother. I've heard that when Weshiba actually saw that 1935 video when he was much older, he was horrified at what he looked like. 1935, what was he? He was, you add 18 to 35, and what do you get? You get, early 50s, mid 50s, which for him was pretty young. He experienced a lot of growth after that. And, to some degree, he was still Morihei Ueshiba, right? And so, you kind of say, well, okay, that's kind of like there's a finite existence there. And then all of a sudden, when it, like basically sort of gets more and more like O sensei, but there are no boundaries to that existence. You see what I mean? So it's similar. So if we take Einstein's model of the universe in some form, okay, and then we kind of say, well, okay, when he talked about the universe an awful lot, okay, an awful lot. Anyway, let's get up. And just, yeah, okay. Now we can take a movement, like for example, that's, in our 30 movement set, that's 6. 5 is already, and then there's, okay. Okay, now what I'm kind of looking at right here is this, let's just say that's very much a particle motion, focus, and this is a wave motion, particle wave, particle wave. Now they're 2 separate movements, but for example, maybe we can go boom, that's more for me a wave motion, and this is more of a particle movement, okay? And really, what am I doing? I'm just saying, okay, when I'm doing this, it's the thrusting motion. It's kind of like doing a lunge punch in karate. Okay? And now we could do that. In other words, this is a particle, this is a particle movement. But what if we go, and that's a wave motion, particle, wave. Particle, wave. Okay? Now, measuring this, boom, particle. There's a wave here, there's focus, boom. Now I can say, okay, I'm gonna go boom, boom. That's now movement number 2 is a particle movement. And boom, I can make it faster and boom, harder, but there's a wave there. So part of me is saying, okay, boom, I can measure that like a particle. This is now measuring this as a wave. And to some degree, that sort of creates the movement. Okay? How I choose to measure the movement influences the movement. Anything there?
I'm gonna have to think about that some more.
Yeah. I mean, I've read it before where when you measure something, you create it. Wake up in the morning and I gotta make coffee. And it's the beginnings of a pretty crappy day.
Sure.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I know the quantum mechanics, the measuring and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, but I'm thinking of it as applied to the staff or spear movement, how that measuring it changes it, how the particle wave, that's what I'm still figuring out.
Well, for example, let's just say we go to level 1, call it Bobby. Bobby's pretty much all kind of disjointed particle. He's learning a movement, sort of. In fact, he might not even, it's like me and making coffee in the morning, okay? Level 2, let's call that a Robert, for whatever reason, it's like, okay. Starts to give more attention to the movement, begins to pay attention to that and that, okay? Level 3, let's call it Nado, all right? Boom, boom, boom. Starts to get pretty good at the movement. Huh? Boom, that's better, boom. Level 4, let's call it Nado Sensei. So where boom, he's got a body. And he's aware of something called ki or energy. Boom. Boom. What is it? It's like a wave. There's still particle substance to that motion. Boom, boom. All right. And what we're saying a little bit is, let's just call Nado, boom. This is good motion, good motion. But Nado Sensei, anything that you see there?
Oh yeah, I mean when you demo the various permutations or levels, it's obvious. It's night and day, right?
Yeah.
Like the first level is you have no idea what your center is doing, and you're moving your arms and legs the way you think
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
seeing Sensei
That's
do it,
body.
right?
Yeah,
Right?
that's body.
And you
Body's a
don't
white
go
belt.
from half moon to full moon to quarter moon. You just move your arms and legs the way it looks to you, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
you need to go through that to get to the next level, right? And so I can see even on video, as you go through the various levels, the energy rises
Yeah.
each level, right?
Yeah.
Like
Body,
moving your arms and legs, that doesn't generate any energy, right? It's
yeah.
just disconnected body movements without any directional key flow, that because it's a net zero, right? Like everything cancels it off because the movement's not coordinated. But then you're like, okay, I got this. I'm going to coordinate in my in a body way, and then you're like using power, right? And that works great for a long time. Like when I was doing karate as a teenager and a 20 something, I had a lot of power, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily flowing the way I flow even when I'm practicing karate at home now. I flow so much better than I did when I was even in my 20s.
Yeah.
Because I have to. I'm in my 50s and I don't have the raw power in my
Okay.
body on a physical level that I did as a young man, right? And
Okay.
I adapt, and I've also come to, patience and time has caused me to see things I couldn't see when I was younger. And like I said, when you go through the levels, I can feel the key rising, even through a video feed over Zoom. I can see it,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
And because it's that obvious,
Yeah.
right? But you have
Yeah.
to be looking for it.
Okay. Yeah, there was he's a pretty famous basketball player, Kevin Durant. And he played AAU basketball, and he was tall for his age. Still tall. I mean, he's almost 7 foot tall. But when he started out as a guard, and he grew. And so, when he was a younger person, he was pretty tall for everybody, in AAU, right? And so what happens is his AAU coach takes him aside and says, Kevin, or they call him KD now, says, because you're tall, everybody's going to try to make you into a center position, basketball tall, right? He said, don't let them. Don't let him do that. To the obvious, he's tall, he plays center. But so what the AAU coach said was, you are a much more athletic version of, and he used an example, Larry Bird. You are not a center. Centers don't dribble the ball the way you do. Okay? And so, because Durant was very much into playing, he was doing much more work than the other players. The coach took him sort of under his wing. And so, what they would do is they would watch videos of Larry Bird. And the thing that, the AAU coach told Kevin Durant, said, you have to be able to see it before you can do it. So, you know, if you're seeing more energy, you're seeing a quality as opposed to commitment. See, the problem with it is that level one, Bobby, can get some information. Bobby can begin to see it, but you know, Bobby's still kind of this way, all right? And then maybe Robert is a little bit more integrated, you know. Nado is boom, starting to get the form and starting to be able, you know, has, you know, what you call it, a bit more power, all right? But you know, the Nado sensei, boom, boom, it's a little different. Now, the question is there more energy there? I would say there's energy for level one, level two, level three, level four, okay? But it's almost like if you measure things, you create that level. Bruce Lee put it very well. He talks about limitation, okay? And so what he said was kind of cool. He said, having no limitation as limitation. I'm a Kung Fu guy studying Wing Chun, which is low and center line, okay? Good. And then he began to realize, I mean, it's not like he was infinite or anything, but you know, I can expand it. I can study Western fencing. I can study Muhammad Ali's movement. I can, instead of being a pure Kung Fu guy, I can get into grappling. So, you know, I mean, that's more what he meant, although I think he was very much into personal development, which again, there's level of Bobby. You can be a better Bobby. But then there's Robert. And then there's Nado, and there's Nado Sensei, level one, level two, level three, level four. Simple motion. You can practice funny things like, okay, I'm gonna measure level one, okay? I'm gonna stand up. Yeah, I gotta stand up, I gotta sit down. Level two, I notice all of a sudden I'm much more aware of my surroundings. Right? So I'm standing and sitting, but I'm more present in a space. Level three, there's kind of a quiet aliveness, beginnings of flow. Level four, feel energy building. Oh, now I have purpose. Okay, so you can play games that way. You can just chart it out. And then what you're doing is you're kind of so you don't want Bobby. Oh yeah, I have to have purpose. You know, Bobby learns about, and that's why. Okay, oh yeah, that person. Boom. Okay, right. One of the biggest compliments I ever got in my whole life, you know, was again I've mentioned it, but my partner Elle, she and I went to go see a Warrior game with Lauren Hare and his wife. It was, you know, it was in Oakland. It was last year. They're going to play there. They're going to move to San Francisco, which I didn't particularly care for at the time. And, you know, and she, basketball, I mean, she was engaged. It was a, you know, and so she was looking around and says, you know, that one guy's different than the rest. And I said, yeah, well, that's Stephen Curry. And she said, oh, yeah, well, she kind of knew broadly. I said, why is he different? On the fact he's really good. She says, he has a glow. And there were really good players there on both teams. And on the Warriors, there was Klay Thompson, there was Kevin Durant, there was Draymond Green. She said, no, he glows. I said, oh, okay. And then, you know, she went to see an Aikido class I was doing. I said, well, what do you think? And she looked at me and said something like, well, you're kind of like Steph. I said, really? Because, you know, basketball, Aikido. Yeah, you have a glow like him. I said, wow, that's a compliment. Okay. So, you know, Bobby, you know, level one, no glow. You know, I got to make coffee in the morning, you know, okay. Level two. Level two starts to be easier, has a bit more perspective. Yeah, and having to make coffee doesn't have to ruin my day. If I don't do it, it won't get done, which is probably true, but it's a little easier. When I stand up to make coffee, there's a little bit more beingness to it. Level three. The day may unfold a bit, and yeah, I got to make coffee now, but have a perspective there. And there's kind of a little bit more juice that starts to flow there. Level four. And that day is the day reflects a bit of my own sense of myself and my own purpose. And yes. And so right there's more than just the informational shift. Because you can read self-help book, which help, but oftentimes it stays mental. And so, the ability to, what we're saying is, to some degree, measure yourself as Bobby, you're Bobby. Measure yourself as Robert, you're Robert. Measure yourself as Nado, you're Nado. Measure yourself as Nado Sensei, ta-da. So, we're using the Nado Sensei's map because, I can talk about Jackie and Jack and whatever, but not sure, or I use just the level 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Anything? Get up and move in a little bit?
Yeah, it all makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things about the Aikido movements is they're really hard. They're very complex. It's almost like, there's a difference between reading a layperson's book on Einstein and getting some very, very interesting concepts, and then being able to sit down and write the equations he did. Okay, it's a little different. And to some degree, the Aikido movements are very much like, they can get very advanced in terms of equations, okay? So one of the things, for example, I'm just gonna walk. It's a level 1 walk. I'm just walking here and just sort of lost in a certain amount of thought. Okay. Level 2. Yeah. I'm feeling the body a little bit more, so I'm just not caught up in all this stuff that's going on. A little bit more body presence. Level 3, I noticed that all of a sudden, I really kind of starting to notice the breathing. All of a sudden, and the beginnings of, let's just say, flow. Now level 4. And that right about there's maybe the beginnings of a glow. Okay? So, just simple things like sitting, standing. Those Sensei likes really simple things, because other than that, the Aikido movements get very complex. Okay? And, let's say we go boom, 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 boom. Well, I measure it a certain way. To some degree, I create myself, which creates a movement. Okay? Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? Now, for me, that's kind of like a level 4 plus. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Okay. I figured that it's shorter. Say level 4 plus. It's a bit more glow. Even that motion, for example, has a kind of a wave function. The particle function goes this way. The wave function kind of moves a little bit more like a spiral. Boom, 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 boom. Change of direction has purpose. Boom, boom, boom. The changes sort of naturally begin to happen. So that's my level 4 plus. Okay. So a lot of times you can kind of, otherwise what happens is you kind of put IQ points on level 1 and muscle on level 1. And you don't really want to do that. You get up in the morning, you gotta make coffee, the level 1 doesn't go away. But on the other hand, take a couple of breaths, center, do a Tai Chi set, pick up your bokken and swing a couple times. All of a sudden, the dimensional process unfolds. Now, what allows 1, 2, 3, 4 is something we call self. It's transparent. Okay? It doesn't impede level 1 going to level 2. Level 1, Bobby may have a lot of stuff that he doesn't want to let go of. Or he might be lazy. Okay? So he's not going to put the time into it. And a certain amount of time is funny. It's not necessarily that all of a sudden Bobby becomes Robert. Bobby learns to be easy, open, settle a little bit, and what happens is, boom, there's a shift to Robert. And Robert does the same thing on a deeper level. There's Nado. Nado does the same thing on a deeper level, and there's Nado Sensei. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So, that's, we kind of go through. I mean, you're still here. That's Einstein's finite universe, okay? But maybe you have no boundaries. Or maybe you create your boundaries by learning to measure. Subconscious behavior. And so things like Aikido or centering, grounding, opening, personal work, teach you to measure yourself in different ways. And therefore, you can then create yourself on different levels. So in that way, I'm trying to tie what we do in Aikido to Einstein's universe is finite, but it has no boundaries. Anyway, anything before we move on? Okay.
Not really at this time.
Yeah. See how this motion is kind of flat. It's a particle motion. I can make that particle motion faster. I can put more power in that. But then there's the wave function. And the wave function is not flat. And the wave function the attenuation is different, or boom, and just boom. And there's a shift on the level of body, to much body that's much more attuned to itself, and the beginnings of what you might call an energy body. Boom, 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 boom. And body improves the mind. What do I do? No, just boom, boom, boom. Now there's that motion, and then there's that motion, and there's that motion. That last one. What am I doing? I'm measuring one, and the next, and the next. You don't lose the first two. It's just that, why hang out in a lesser state by constantly learning to measure yourself as a lesser being, okay? Nado Sensei kind of says, he would, sometimes he'd watch O Sensei walk into a wall. And then on the mat, the way he put it, there's a Weshiba, the old man, walks into a wall. And then all of a sudden, there's a Weshiba of Aikido. And the way that he would say things like, when I'm in this state, I can't be beaten. And some people would react to that and say, what an arrogant guy. Old, arrogant guy. And Nado Sensei said, no, when he's in that state, he can't be beaten. Weshiba, the old man, walks into walls. Weshiba of Aikido was in that state. And so, exactly what that means is another question. But on another level, Nado Sensei, again, I quote this a lot, gives me hope, that I want to do Aikido like you. And Sensei said, that's funny, nobody else seems to just want to do their own Bobby Robert version of it. They don't necessarily want to, but he said, good. But he also said, it's so easy, but I can't give it to you. It's something you have to find. If I give it to you, it's information, and Bobby will know about it and probably will never reach Robert. That's why old style, a lot of times they kind of put it into some sort of code or make it into a spiritual riddle or something like that. And those senseis was the first thing you do. And if it's the only thing you ever do is to make yourself, cause yourself, create yourself to stand on the floating bridge of heaven. And that was it. It doesn't exist here. It's a mythological reference in the Japanese myths of creation. Or what he was alluding to is an interior position you have with yourself. Okay? Anyway. Now what we did, for example, this is the wave function. Now, what I just did is turn and pivot. So as we're trying to do, for example, I can do this as a particle. I can do this as a particle with a little bit more experience and no more power. But what is it like to measure yourself as a wave? You're very easy. You're open. Your movements are freer. Wow. On that one, instead of doing 180, I did a 270. Sometimes I do a 360. 360 is hard as a particle person. So I play games that way. And it's playing games bad. I think called discovery. Einstein was by himself in a patent office because he couldn't, and he played the game of finding out how the universe worked in a little better way that Newton didn't have. So I'm sure it started as a game, right? Anything?
Yeah, to connect it to Einstein. Like you said, you can be at a basic level and
Yeah,
practice and practice and practice and um, never get any better or never leave the basic level, but you're better. You're a lot
yeah,
better,
yeah.
but you never leave the basic level. Um,
Yeah,
the Do
yeah,
Sensei
yeah.
one time,
Bobby
you know,
is okay. We can learn a lot. It's just that at some point there's diminishing returns. And
yeah.
with
So
Reshiba,
one of the things Nato Sensei said at when he used to teach Monday nights at the old dojo and
yeah, he did.
in
Yeah,
on Third Street, right? So one of the things he said at one of the classes I was at, he said that there were two kinds of long-term Aikido practitioners he'd seen. There were the kind who don't get better, right? Like they reach a
yeah,
certain point and they get their shodan, they get their nidan, whatever, but they never really get better.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then there are the kind that do get better throughout their lives. And he said that those people were making conscious decisions to focus on different aspects of Aikido at different times. Like, I'm
yeah,
going to do a month, I'm going to focus on this, right? I'm going to
yeah,
focus on center for a month. Okay, that month is
yeah,
over. Now I'm going to focus on base, right? It doesn't have to be a month, but whatever, a certain period of time that they
yeah,
were making conscious decisions. And I think that what he was getting at there, I've thought about this for years, right? What he said. And I think what he was getting at, you could ask him, is that is something like Einstein, what Einstein was getting at. You can have two-dimensional people in a two-dimensional world,
yeah,
and they could become, Olympic two-dimensional athletes, right? They could be really good at two-dimensional. But unless they shift their perception to three dimensions, they'll never be three-dimensional people, right? And that's the
yeah,
same thing. Unless you do some kind of practice just in the sphere of Aikido alone, if you don't do some kind of practice to to take yourself out of the rut or the groove. Actually, I say probably groove is a better
yeah,
thing. Then that groove becomes a rut, and you're just stuck there. But if
yeah,
you think three-dimensionally in a two-dimensional world, or you think four-dimensionally in our three-dimensional world, if you think both the wave and the particle in a world of waves and particles, then you can bootstrap yourself into the next dimension and then the next dimension and the next dimension. And I,
yeah,
I think that's akin to what Nato Sensei was getting at that night at your dojo, and also akin to what Einstein was getting. Anyway, that's my thinking as a result of the conversation you and I are having today.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Um, See, I put my hand out. My hand is out. I put my hand out with a conscious extension. It's more relaxed, it's fuller. I put my hand out, it almost floats out. Okay. And once it starts to float out, boom, a little different. That's different than putting it out faster. Boom. Okay. So a dimensional practice.
Yeah, that last one looked like a Star Wars ship coming out of hyperspace. Suddenly there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of years of karate, but under no circumstances did I confuse the karate people with Master Choi, my Tai Chi teacher. Master Choi, boom, he just moved. Boom, it's fast. Karate was fast and strong. It's like, boom, you be in and out, take your eye. Take your eye, take your testicle. And when you boom, take your ears. Boom. And these are just basic forms, right, in the Tai Chi thing. But he would demonstrate, the way he put it with me once, he kind of give me some hints, right? And he just said that, you know, like a lot of people, you know, were doing, I think he was talking more external, but he was also talking maybe some Tai Chi people that all they do is work, you know. And he said they get strong, but they're slow. And the way that he put it with me, he said, you know, developing just purely your physical and your energy around your physical body, you get stronger. Get more quote unquote internal power. But he said, don't do it. And the way that he put it was more like, okay, the way that it works by training, you establish a relationship with what he called the chi, the energy. Like there, for example, it's kind of like a gently rocking surface of the ocean or water. Okay. But then he said something like, but you do, you will the chi to move you. I'm going to move them. I'm going to move faster. Now, boom, you move through the chi. And so, you know, Aikido. Hikizuchi sensei, one of the things about him, if you took falls for him, is that he didn't seem to be moving fast at all. But when you were trying to attack him, he moved, it seemed like he was moving really fast, right? And you got used to it. It was just, you know, kind of a little bit of a space-time temporal displacement there. And then when he visited in 1974, I won't mention who it was, but one of the area's top teachers, he called out to Uke, you know, and he threw him around. And I talked to that person later and says, you know, I was out there, I didn't know where he was. I said, yeah, you know, because, you know, it was like, yeah, I've been thrown around enough that way that I was used to it. He says, I didn't know where he was. Boom, right? I was like, yeah, it's kind of confusing sometimes, is the way I put it. Dimensional shift, all right? Some people just stay Bobby, and they get kind of better within Bobby. And so I think that's what Nado Sensei was talking about. Let me check the time. Yeah, we still got a couple minutes. So we're kind of in the both and versus either or. In other words, okay, he's either here or he's there, which is both places. We'll call a temporal space-time. Apparently, Osensei was really good at that. Okay. Anyway, anything before we go, or?
No, Sensei, I feel like I've already probably talked too much. But
Well, you know, it's a tricky thing because, again, if you don't discuss it, you sometimes, you know, Bobby doesn't want to talk about this stuff, to be honest with you. Bobby's very, very, how shall I put it? He's very uncomfortable with it. Okay. Robert's a little easier with it. Nado, more open, senses things can be finer. And Nado Sensei says, that's the reason I went to Japan and studied with O Sensei. For that. A little different. Okay. That's why O Sensei said, you want to do Aikido like me? That's funny. Nobody else seems to. All right. Which means I kind of doubt it was just that one person that he was referencing, because I think there are others that did. But, you know, a lot of it is, you know, you just want to measure Aikido. Well, good. You're in the dojo, you're getting better, you're getting more rank and everything. But the question is, do you understand the dimensional structure of things? Do you understand that to some degree, as you measure yourself, so you are? Do you understand the key? Self is what allows you to measure yourself as a Bobby, a Robert, a Nado Sensei, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So you don't want to put too much in the way of muscle or IQ points or anything on the level 1. So you're a bit more flexible. Self is very flexible. I mean, to some degree, you could say that, you know, we are finite, you know, using the Bobby, Robert, Nado Sensei, but self is not. Self has no boundaries. Therefore, self allows us to go from Bobby to Robert, Robert to Nado to Nado Sensei. So it's a little bit that way. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, just I think and this is true of not just Aikido and not just martial arts, but in any kind of arts or human endeavor.
Yeah.
You know, we can be our own worst enemies, and we put limits around ourselves that we believe to be real limits, but they are illusion, right? Like, I mean, there's many times over the course of my lifetime thus far, I have either exceeded my own expectations or I've watched someone else exceed their own expectations in a way that is not just quantity, but qualitative, right? Like they've gone to another dimension or I've gone to another dimension or been more successful at something I've worked at for years than I ever thought would be possible. And I think really, you know, we put our own limitations on ourselves and wall ourselves in 1 by 1 and 2 by 2 and 3 by 3, or to put it another way, 2 dimensions in a 3-dimensional world. So I think it's good to realize that even if we are finite beings, we can be unbounded.
Well, the way that this one Aikido teacher, you know, he put it to me, he said that, you know, if you argue for your limitations, they are yours. Right? No, I'll never escape this. I got to wake up every morning and make coffee. Well, that's great. Fine. You know, all of a sudden, that's the way I measure myself. And that, you know, and therefore, and to some degree, I'm creating that level of me, but also my perception of the world. Okay, that way. So.
Sure, but to be fair, I never glow before coffee in the morning myself. I don't know.
Yeah, there's that thing, you know, where, oh yeah, I'm not awake until I have coffee, but I got to make the coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a cause effect thing, you know. It's like, you know, at level 4, it's going to flow right through it. And appreciate the coffee much more as opposed to like, God, I had to make this. You know, I got to drink it to begin to feel alive for the day. You know, that feeling a little bit. It's an interesting one, you know, because the sensei said, win over yourself. Masaka, true victory. Agatsu, win over yourself. Anyway, we'll be in Mountain View on Sunday for our normal 11:30 to 1 p.m. In-person class. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Sensei. Have a wonderful, you know, next couple days.
Yes, you too.